So, we're picking up from Acts chapter 2, verse 42. The early church, the group of people, remember, that day there were baptized, verse 41, 3,000 were added that day to the church. Verse 47 in chapter 2, they praised God. They enjoyed favor with all people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Okay. So the church is made up of those who are saved. Now we're going to look at church maybe on the next lesson. But today we're going to look at this idea of sharing under the idea of the Lord's Supper. Because we read, keep reading, verse 43. Everyone there? Mary, you're there? Verse 43 in Acts chapter 2.
Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles.
Okay. Verse 42. I'm so sorry. Verse 42. What did they do?
Devoted themselves.
And what did they devote themselves to? There's 4 things.
The apostles' teaching and to fellowship, and to breaking of bread and prayer.
Okay, what are the 4 things?
Teaching, fellowship, breaking of bread, prayer.
There you go. I wanted you to repeat that so that you saw. We already did teaching. We understand the importance of teaching. It's the understanding of doctrine. It's the way that we understand. And the doctrine was the apostles' teaching. Are we still doing that? I pray we are. Then it says they gave themselves to fellowship. And we talked about that fellowship, that understanding of koinonia. Koinonia, which means fellowship. Some have said the fellows in the same ship, but I've heard that before. But fellowship, it has this idea of sharing, commonality. And you'll see that because in verse 44, Mary, it says all believers were together. They had everything in common. Actually, they were selling their possessions, verse 45, and they gave to everyone as they had need. And then it said that every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. They broke bread in their homes, and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts. Beautiful. So they met together in the temple courts. They met in a wide open area. The temple, you know the temple. The temple has various courts. This was probably the courts of the Gentiles because you couldn't go past it. There was a court of the Gentiles which you could enter. Gentiles could come that close. And it's a great image because if the temple had the presence of God, because that's what the temple was all about, right? That God's presence was always among his people in the temple. But only the priest, right, could go into that holy place, and then once a year into the holy of holy places. Only one guy, and he had to be totally cleansed. Where were the Gentiles? If they came to that, they were as far away, but they were at least in the vicinity of the first court. Go, Joe.
Is that where they conducted business also?
Yeah, that's where most of your activity went. Matter of fact, they would pray. They had offices off to the left and right. There was a lot going on in that. It was the biggest of the courts. And then it almost gets smaller and smaller. The next one was the court of the women. Oh, you mean women could go closer than Gentiles? Yes. The faith of the Jewish woman could go closer than a Gentile. But don't get mad at me. Then there was a faith of the court of the men. Nope, women stop here. Men go the next step. Who's closer? Not saying. Then, guess what? The men couldn't go. Then you got to the court of the priests. And then the priests. So it was these getting closer. And that's why when you hear about Jesus came and the veil was broken and you have access to God, you don't really know what gift you just got. And for a Jew, that was like mind-blowing. You mean I don't have to go through this, then do that, then sacrifice that, then give to the priest and buy a lamb and serve it and put the blood and do it and serve it, and then even then I don't get to go in. I give it to the priest and then he does for me what I couldn't do for myself. And yeah, I can just go. Mind-blowing. You mean it's not the Sabbath anymore? No, we're meet on the first day of the week. What? That's not what we do. That's not our tradition. What? You mean all I want you to do is grasp what it took. We just take it for granted. Yeah, I go to church. For a Jew to leave that, they gave up a lot, and they probably lost a lot of family connections because of it.
It's an interesting, I brought that up because a lot of times I think it's hard to imagine